Welcome back. And on this exciting program, we'll be discussing and uncovering in great depth Napoleon Hill's Lesson 2 entitled Mastermind Alliance. On this program, we have a power trio who really know and understand firsthand the power that comes from being part of a mastermind alliance as outlined by Napoleon Hill. So before we enter this exciting session together on the behalf of the Napoleon Hill Foundation, it's our great pleasure and honor of introducing our dynamic panel of guests. And they are Jo Condrill, Don Hutson, and Dr. Jo Dudley. Starting with Jo Condrill. Jo Condrill is a speaker, author, and entrepreneur. She's also an author and co-author of 3 books published in national magazines. She's led a Toastmasters district in Washington, D.C. area to rank number 1 in the world, and has also received the U.S. Army Decoration for Exceptional Civilian Service, the Army's highest award for civilians. Years ago, Amway Distributors introduced Jo to Napoleon Hill's classic book, Think and Grow Rich, and it changed her life forever. In addition, when Jo was anticipating becoming the district governor for Toastmasters International, as a result of reading Think and Grow Rich, she formed a mastermind group and took this district to number 1 in the world. Jo continues to find inspiration and lessons from Think and Grow Rich. Her first copy of the book is on her bookshelf, highlighted, underlined, and annotated in many places. Though the glue that bound it largely disappeared, it's held together with a rubber band, and it continues to provide empowering lessons, insights, and many memories for her. And joining Jo Condrill is Don Hutson, who's the past president of the National Speakers Association and the founding board. He's a veteran speaker with 6,000-plus speaking presentations worldwide. He's a member of the Speaker Hall of Fame. He's also number 1 New York Times, Wall Street Journal best-selling author, the 1-Minute Entrepreneur, and the 1-Minute Negotiator. He's the author of 13 books and happens to be the owner of one of the most extensive self-help libraries anywhere, and it's loaded with all the works of Dr. Napoleon Hill. And thirdly and equally, joining us is Dr. Jo Dudley, Sr., who's the co-founder and chief executive officer of Dudley Products, one of the largest African-American-owned manufacturers and distributors of ethnic hair care and cosmetics in the United States. Dr. Dudley is known nationally and internationally as an inspirational speaker and humanitarian. Among his numerous achievements and awards include a 2008 member of Horatio Alger Board of Directors, 2007 Black Retail Action Group Recognition Award, 2005 Trumpet Award recipient, 2001 Direct Selling Association Hall of Fame inductee, and 1995 Horatio Alger Association of Distinguished Americans inductee. He's also the author of I Am, I Can, I Will, Walking by Faith, a life-changing book that proves that you can achieve what you believe with faith and hard work. Dr. Dudley attributes all of his accomplishments to reading the book Think and Grow Rich by Napoleon Hill. In fact, he's read it over 300 times. Needless to say, it has been the grassroots for many of his decisions in the business and educating his sales force. So with that said, Team Master Alliance, welcome to this program.
Thank you, Phil.
Thank you.
It's just a delight to have you all here. And I guess the first question we'll go into is, some have heard this term, many have, and some haven't, but what is a Mastermind Alliance? And in keeping with the protocol of ladies first, why don't we go with you, Jo Condrill?
Very good, very good. A Mastermind Alliance is a collection of people, a small group of people who come together for specific purposes and who trust each other and begin to entrust in each other ideas that come to them as a result of their collaboration and focusing on a particular issue.
I think that's well said, Jo. This is Don. I would add to that. We've heard the cliche today that people want to do business with those they know, like, and trust. Similarly, if you're going to have a mastermind alliance, it needs to be made up of people you know, like, and trust. And there needs to be some commonality in your value system and total agreement on the purpose of that mastermind alliance to make sure that everything does stay in harmony.
That is fantastic insight. And Jo, would you like to add to your take and understanding of what a mastermind alliance is?
Yes, the mastermind group is a group of people that are working towards the same goal and in harmony with each other. It's the makeup of these people. And the one thing about the mastermind group that I'm excited about, too, that nothing can stop you. So you have a mastermind group with others, all of you working towards the same goal.
Mm-hmm. I'd like to comment on that, working toward the same goal, if I might. One of the things I've experienced is mastermind groups where individuals focus on their own particular goals, but gain from the knowledge, the specialized knowledge of other people in the group. I've participated in groups where, for instance, in the small business sense, where each was focused on their own particular industry or their own particular problems, but it was not a common goal. It was focused on their individual needs or wants or what they expected to have contributed from the specialized knowledge of others in the group.
You know, I think Joe makes a great point there. I believe that when it comes to purpose, it needs to not be something that is a general purpose that everyone sort of agrees with. It needs to be a purpose that is in writing, that everybody made a contribution to the crafting of that purpose statement. And that way there's total and absolute clarity. And you might have someone, if you've got 4 people together who you think are going to work, one of them might say, well, now that we've clarified the purpose you guys see, I don't think I'm a fit for this group. And better to find that out early on than later in the process. I had a mastermind group many years ago. There were 4 of us, and we had high trust. We were friends, and things worked pretty well, actually, for over a year. We shared our financial statements. We had quarterly meetings, and we really learned a lot from each other. But what happened after about a year and a half was 2 of the people in the group began to have a little bit of friction, and it was based on the idea that they had some variability in their value system and their beliefs. And we all know that behavior comes from our beliefs. Well, if these guys didn't believe the same thing, that's a recipe for high stress in a relationship, and as stress goes up, trust comes down, and it didn't completely blow up our mastermind group, but we did have one person who resigned. So that's an example of the importance of clarification of purpose, I think.
Like what Joe said, we have got people to write down their goals, what they wanted, and getting together to improve each other's ability to get a job done. So that's what we did, and that really turned out good. Their goals were different, but their purpose to grow themselves so they could grow their business and grow what they were pushing for. So that was a big help for this group that I had that I worked with.
Those are terrific insights, and perhaps we can just delve into really the benefits that come with being part of a mastermind group. But for clarification purposes, what are your thoughts in terms of having a mastermind group with, of course, one purpose, like Joe was the district governor of Toastmasters, and the goal was to take that district to #1, so everyone on her team was part of that one mission. What about people with different types of goals coming into a mastermind alliance with the purpose of empowering one another? Would that work?
Well, I think it could work. The thing that becomes important in my estimation, Phil, is there a reasonable amount of congruence? For example, is there some overlap in the various goals that people have? If you could picture circles on a piece of paper, and none of them touch each other, and none of them are overlapping at all, that might be something that would represent a singularity of purpose on one person's point, but if there's no high level of compatibility on them working together and no overlaps of those circles, that's going to be problematical. So if you could say, let's say you got 5 people in a mastermind alliance, and the goals are represented by 5 circles on a piece of paper, but all of them are overlapping. That's what I call goal congruence. And the more goal congruence you have, the greater the probability that alliance is going to succeed.
Beautiful insight. Beautiful insight. Dr. Dudley, do you have any experience with that? And perhaps you can take us into some of your experiences of being part of a mastermind alliance and how it's worked for you.
Yes. I started my business with $10, but the other thing was that I was labeled mentally retarded. And it was a little more challenge for me, I think, than most. But what I did first, I had a group of people and I had some goals, and their goals was to, everybody had to first read self-help books. And the first self-help books was Think and Grow Rich. And then in the group, everybody had to buy a home. And then everybody had to have insurance. And everybody, again, they had to really work to improve themselves. Now, when I first started out, nobody had anything, really. Nobody had no homes, nothing like that. So we pulled that group together, and we would sit and read for about an hour every morning. And many of these people was not employed, and some of them were not employable. But we believed that we could make their living, so we had a goal that everybody would become successful. And we had a goal, that goal was to be successful, and then we wanted to make 200 millionaires, and that was kind of exciting. Everybody would work hard to pull all that together, so that was a success for us. I do believe that if you got everybody in harmony of success, not just necessarily a particular goal, but the particular goal would be success. And that's how I started reading Think and Grow Rich book. And even today, each time I got a goal, I would read Think and Grow Rich. And we would sit down together and read for 6 hours. That was a common goal, looking for something to solve our problem in Think and Grow Rich book.
Tremendous, inspiring insight. And Jo, you're no stranger to the process either. Could you take us into your experiences of how it's worked for you on a personal level?
Sure. First, I'd like to comment that I think one of the very important components that Dr. Jo was talking about is belief, and the belief of the group that they could be successful. And I think that's really important when you get right down to it. It's a core component of Mastermind Group. My Mastermind Group began when I was to be elected to be a district governor in Toastmasters, and while I knew the regulations and the forms and all of that, what I didn't know was what exactly did a district governor do. And so I formed a mastermind group based on Napoleon Hill's Think and Grow Rich, of people who had been successful district governors. And one was a #1 district governor, Pauline Shirley, and another was Dr. Benny Bow, who was also a district governor, Michael Wardinsky, who had been a district governor, and my mentor at an earliest stage in Toastmasters. And finally, another gentleman, Chuck Waterman, who had been a #1 district governor in a different district, District 36, a number of years earlier. So what we did was we met monthly in my condo, and we focused on particular issues, and the ideas that they came out with were absolutely great and things I needed to know, but you don't know except by experience. And I wanted to hit the ground running, and the district was energized, and we did, through the course of the year, reach #1. And the kudos and the comebacks were absolutely heartwarming, and I still have them. We did it, but everybody came on board in the end. Everybody comes on board in the beginning. But the mastermind was the catalyst for going forward with the idea and then helping the people to see the vision and to come to believe. You know, not everybody goes along with you in the beginning, and that's straying a little bit from the mastermind principle. But when you take it into action, when you put your ideas that you come from the mastermind group to real life with and decide to implement them, the key is putting it into action. And how does that work when you transition from thoughts to things?
I would add to that, Phil, that for a Mastermind Alliance, I agree with everything that Jo and Dr. Jo said. I think for it to really get legs and be a meaningful experience for the participants, you've got to have people in there who you have a respect for in terms of their opinions, their intellect, and what they bring to the table. And I think in its purest form, a Mastermind Alliance takes advantage of the principle that all of us is smarter than one of us. In our teachings at U.S. Learning, we call that collective intellect. And I love to ask owners of businesses and managers and leaders, what kind of grade do you give yourself on tapping the collective intellect of your team members? Because it's through an effective process of doing that that companies grow and really tap into the creativity and the IQ of everybody on hand. And I think a Mastermind Alliance has got to similarly function with that thought in mind.
That is terrific. It makes me think of Aristotle's great statement that the whole is greater than the individual sum parts. That when you put two people together, for instance, 1 and 1 doesn't equal 2, but it could equal 10. That synergy, I believe, that's what you're saying, that creates a greater force than the individual parts. That is tremendous, and that really takes us to some of the benefits of a mastermind group. And perhaps we can each highlight what you feel this type of alliance has benefited you and your team members the most. And Dr. Dudley, what do you feel is one of the most outstanding benefits of being part of a Mastermind Alliance?
Being part of a mastermind group really gives you extra power to accomplish your goals and help your members accomplish their goals. One of the things that really set out for me when my daughter Ursula finished Harvard Law School, and matter of fact, she was in the class with the president, and when she finished, she came back to me and she said, Dad, I want to build $1 million business. I said, okay, I'll show you how to do that. I said, the first thing I want you to do, every week, take 6 hours and read Think and Grow Rich book for 3 months. Well, she did it for 9 months. And when she finished reading it over and over and over again, she was able to build a $5 million business. Plus, she runs our major company now. But we pulled all that together. She formed a group of other people to read along with her. So that was a real plus for me to see what Think and Grow Rich and the Mastermind group could do and accomplish. It gave encouragement and also persistence of doing this week in and week out. So again, every Monday from 6 to 12, that's what she did.
Fantastic. So that is one of the benefits. What stands out in your mind, Joe, as being one of the most outstanding benefits that has served you well and your team?
I think one of the things is the time to come together and think. So often we're busy and doing other things, putting out fires and chasing after children, as in my case. And when you sit down actually with other people to focus on particular aspects of a business or whatever life situation, collectively, with a disciplined mind. Dr. Ben Carson, the famous director of pediatric neurosurgery at Johns Hopkins Hospital, talks about the brain, and he says, I came to realize it's simply a mechanical component of an entity of far greater beauty and power, the mind. And he goes on to say he was awed by what an inspired and disciplined mind could accomplish. And when you gather together with other minds and focus on a particular issue, there's a synergy, yes, and there's after effects. I often found that when I left the group, something that was said, perhaps to somebody else in the group, stayed with me and inspired me with new creative thoughts on my own particular issue that I was trying to accomplish at that time. I can't say enough for the value of a mastermind group.
Excellent.
Phil, I would ditto what Jo said. She made me think of the OPE principle, the importance of knowing and understanding other people's experience. And in a good mastermind alliance, if you've got 4 or 5 people who are members, you're able to tap into the experience base of the other people. And you can say, for example, in my business, I'm thinking about opening a new division that would look kind of like this, and somebody might say, you know what, I had a similar opportunity not too long ago, and here's what I did, and here's what happened, and here's what I learned. And it's just the opportunity to learn from other people one-on-one in a private environment where there's a spirit of harmony and common purpose, and it's so powerful. I would hate to think that I would try to go out and succeed in my business without the things I've learned from others in mastermind alliances and my close friends and advisors.
That's incredible. And so what we've got here is shared experience that really augments the collective value of the group and each individual, creative problem-solving, encouragement. What about accountability? Has that been a big factor of benefit?
I may be the out person on this, but I believe accountability for each person is their own choice. I've seen groups and been part of groups where they would like you to set a goal, and then basically if you didn't accomplish what you set out to by the next meeting, you were almost chastised, and I think that's counterproductive. I think each person sets their own goals and are accountable to themselves, not necessarily to the group. They should agree on that accountability issue, though, as the group gets going as one of their guidelines.
For me, I talk to people about putting a mastermind group together. And what I tell them, put the best 4 or 5 people that they know together, and then you will have to weed them out. Sometimes that causes some friction, but at least you have to get started somewhere and work with what you have, and then make out what you want out of it. And if they don't work right, eliminate that one, and when another one come in, replace them. But many people have waited so long to put the mastermind group together until they don't ever get it together. So I say 3 or 4 people, put them together. The best that you know, not the worst, but the best. And this has been beneficial for me and beneficial for me to be able to help people to form the Mastermind Alliance.
I agree with that, and one of the difficult things in a group is to let somebody go, and how do you do that? When you say there is no longer a good fit here, we suggest you form a different mastermind group, or how does that work? I've been asked that many, many times, and basically I feel like it's essential to weed out those persons who don't match, who don't serve the common purpose. And doing that, you have to be very careful. But I think if it's said up front, before this person joins the group, there's a tentative period where we'll see how it goes, and perhaps it would be necessary for you to join a different group.
To your point, Joe, there's an old saying that if you're in a group and you don't know who the weak link is probably you. and one of the things that we did in our mastermind group, the first one that I was in years ago that I alluded to earlier, is we had an annual chairman. And that person was responsible for establishing the meeting site, the meeting dates and times, and the agenda. And at the end of the year, that person would roll off and we'd have another chairman come on board. And if there was some kind of a conflict or a problem area, you went to that chairman at that particular time and said, here's an issue I think we need to address. And then it's up to that chairman to have the courage to say, I need to bring up a sensitive issue, and here's what it is. And you do it, and you face it, and you deal with it in an accountable and upfront manner. You don't want to hurt anybody's feelings, but you need to do what you need to do for the viability of the group. Otherwise, you're going to waste everybody's time. But I really admire what Dr. Joe said. The first thing you got to do is try to make a good decision of who's included, and then get started. Don't be among those people who are sort of kind of thinking about before long maybe getting around to doing something.
Excellent. Let's talk about the actual process of the meeting itself. What have you found to be a good frequency in terms of meeting, and what happens between meetings?
Well, usually in my mastermind group, we try to do at least weekly, but most time we do it daily. And that worked well because many of the people that was in my group was people that worked in the company. And so then that was priority for us, the group, to get together on a daily basis. And we worked with them. And then we laid out the process of what we're trying to get to. What's our goal? What does it take for us to do to get to our goal? And that was a process that we continued to work with. And then we had another group that we did monthly. But we just took the time. We thought that, and we still think, that the most important thing is the mastermind group coming together and working out projects. So we put on the board the ideas that we want to accomplish, and we followed that system. That's been helpful for us and for me personally. After I've downsized my position out, I still got a daily base group that I spend some time with, and we work together. But I think the most important thing, again, is putting together the Mastermind Alliance to help build whatever you want to build. It will help you. Save a lot of time, too.
I think that's really great if you can meet daily. I would like to do that with a group, to meet daily, and it seems to me like since you all were co-located, it was a bit easier. One of the groups I was in the Washington, D.C. area, and it was very difficult for people to get together, but we did it weekly. And then later on, people were asking, well, why can't you do it by telephone? Why does your group have to meet? Is that important that you physically get together? And personally, I've never had a mastermind group where you meet by telephone, although I believe it's possible. I think it's much more important to get together where you can see each other and interact with each other and take advantage of nonverbal communications and touch. I think it's important to be able to touch other people.
I would add to that. I agree with Jo. I think that if it's in person, you're going to have a much more meaningful experience. It's going to be a richer experience. And I think the frequency of your meeting, the driver of that frequency issue might be your purpose. For example, if your articulated purpose is that you want to achieve blank by 1 year from today, you might need to meet weekly. In my mastermind group, we met quarterly, but we did a cursory review of our financial statements and everything every quarter. And then the chairman had the right to call special meetings as needed. So we would average maybe 6 meetings a year, with quarterly meetings plus a couple of special meetings for special purposes. And there was one time we had someone who was going through a crisis, and he called the chairman. He said, we need to have a meeting, and we need to have it today. Well, everybody happened to be in town, and we dropped what we were doing, and we had a 3-hour meeting that day. And that's pretty hard to do sometimes, but if somebody's got a crisis, you got to be there for them. So those are a couple of thoughts that might be helpful on the frequency issue.
Mm-hmm. And also on the benefit issue. You're not alone.
Yeah,
you're not
absolutely.
Alone. Yeah. And being a goal achiever sometimes can feel like it's a lonely place, but when you're part of a mastermind group, like you've described, there's so much encouragement. What about the structure of the meeting in terms of the meeting itself? How structured should it be? Should everyone have equal amount of time to share? Should there be a timer? Should it start on time and end on time? How structured should it be?
What we used to do that worked very well is we gave everybody 20 minutes for review. And again, in that particular group, we had 4 people. Again, you might have 10 or 12, or you might have 3, or whatever the number might be. But we went through a review opportunity and said, here's where I was 3 months ago. Here's where I am today. Here are the issues I presented last time. You suggested I do so-and-so and such, and here are some behaviors I've changed, some actions I've taken, and this is where I am today. And we held each other accountable. And if there was somebody who had a problem they were trying to solve, and it was a serious problem, and they came back 1 quarter later and there had been no behavior change, we would give them a rash of hard time over that. So that accountability factor must be individually induced, but also it's collectively induced. So that's something that worked well for us.
Excellent insight.
Yeah, what worked well for us was the fact that we had a group, and we would read for 6 hours Think and Grow Rich most of the time. Mm-hmm. And then what we would do, we would ask everybody, we would go around the table, we read for maybe an hour and sometimes 3 hours, and we ask them, what did you get from this? What did you get from it? And we asked everybody, and we went around the table. Most times there'd be 7 or 8 people in the group, and we go around the table, what do you get from this? And what are you going to do with what you got from this? And that's what we did. And that to me, is something that was very helpful because everybody got a chance to participate in the process of the group. And also, if somebody got something different, nobody criticized that person. Whatever, we asked them, what did they get from this they read for that time? In the book, we always would start from the same place, and that brought harmony. That's why I like the group that you can touch. You can look at them and watch them as they talk, watch them, just see what they're doing and see what another person doing. And then there's a spirit. Now, the one thing that I liked was, as Dr. Hill said, is the subconscious mind. And I think that when you got a mastermind group, and you really talk and you spend some time, you reach the subconscious mind, which never sleeps. And that made a lot of empowerment to deal with the subconscious mind.
Excellent.
I think so, too. And with regard to the process and stating up front what was accomplished or something good that happened to you at the beginning of the week, I think sets a hopeful tone, and maybe an enthusiasm will spring from that. What we did, as Don said, we went around the table and everyone had an opportunity to present an issue, and then as one person presented the issue, the others had an opportunity to comment on it. And with an eye on the time, that's the chairperson's responsibility to tactfully move us on if it was drawn out too long. And in addition to that, we added the idea of contribution. And in one case, one of the people in the group presented a gold nugget for anybody's consideration. She put it out there. Here's this person who has a talk show, and he's open for people to participate, the small business advocate. And our whole group was small business people. And so I followed up on that, called, and was interviewed on the show many times. And so for me, that was an added benefit. Like we would say in San Antonio, it was pilon. It was something in addition to what we paid for. It was a gratuity. But I think it's important that people think of what can I contribute, what specific can I contribute to this group as a whole.
Those are just fabulous insights. Would you suggest that it would be wise and important to have a predetermined written agreement amongst group members when commencing your Mastermind Alliance?
I think the answer, Phil, is absolutely. I think it's as important as having your goals in writing. So they say if you write down your goals, you'll triple your commitment and the probability of successful achievement. And I think this is true with our Mastermind Alliance. We need to have a written purpose, and if we have variability in our goals from our one meeting to the next, we need to have those in writing. And it's simple to just ping everybody an email now so that they can make sure they've got a handle on it. Maybe a reminder before the meeting. You'll recall our agenda for this meeting is. But Jim Rohn used to have a wonderful thought. You know, he was a great proponent of Napoleon Hill. But Jim Rohn used to say, if something's important, work from document, not just thought. And I think there's a payoff there for us.
Yeah. And what about putting clauses in there, for instance, consistency of showing up, showing on time, and if one of the members does not, for any reason, adhere to the collective group agreement, how should that be handled?
Well, I think that the people that don't adhere to the kind of agreement, most time they weed themselves out, at least from my experience. And I think you do need an agreement, and you read that agreement on a regular basis when you open up your meeting. But I think that's some kind of program that you really have to get people to stay with you. And then if they don't, you know that somewhere there got to be some kind of elimination if they don't eliminate themselves. Because the key thing is, Dr. Hill talked to, is harmony. And if you don't have that harmony, you're not going to get the results that you want to get. And some groups I had, I wrote that down on harmony, because I said, now, if we're not all together, the spirit of the subconscious is not going to give us the power that we need to get where we want to get to.
Yeah,
I agree completely. And as a takeoff on Dr. Joe's idea, I think if you cannot attend a meeting that's been scheduled, no matter what the reason is, the bottom line is you are depriving the rest of the group of the benefit of your insights, and that's not fair. So fairness has got to be the order of the day, and you need to have a rule that you miss X number of meetings, you're out, period.
And you need a strong leader that doesn't mind saying the things that need to be said to the people who are not performing or not contributing to the group. Oftentimes we want to be liked and we don't want to say something disagreeable to somebody, but that leader's got to bite the bullet and help the person see that they don't belong there any longer.
Right.
Now, we've been talking about the actual meeting and the process, but what about between meetings? Do you find that people now become the ears and the eyes of one another? And what kind of benefits have you been able to experience and see as a result of being part of this alliance? that goes in, day out, week by week, month by month.
We had occasions where somebody had a certain problem they were trying to solve, and we all pitched in to try to help. And maybe 3 days after that meeting, it becomes apparent to you that there's one idea that's going to be very helpful. Just pick up the phone and call that person. I don't think you have to call a special meeting. Be a valuable resource to each other any and every time you can.
Terrific. What about networking opportunities? Is a mastermind group a networking group, and what's the difference? And, of course, one of the benefits surely must be networking opportunities that arise from it. What's been your experience with that?
Well, I have one idea on that, Phil. I had a client who cornered me after I did a speech not long ago, and he said, Don, I've started a mastermind group, and our goal is, we're all in sales, and it's about prospecting, and we're in non-competitive businesses. Mm-hmm. What do you recommend? And I said, well, at first I applaud you're doing this because I think it's a great way to get additional leads for each other. But make sure that you're going after similar people. For example, you wouldn't want somebody who's a Lexus salesperson to be in a mastermind group with somebody who is going after somebody whose average income is $40,000 less than a typical Lexus driver. So you might have the Lexus salesperson and the Northwestern Mutual estate planner, and you might have somebody who's in the jewelry business, but you try to zero in on and picture the type of clientele you're going for and make sure there's compatibility there. So that would be not only networking, that would be a rather sophisticated prospecting process. Mm-hmm. But that could also be called a Mastermind Alliance. And it's networking to a degree, but, you can be a resource to each other in other ways. Mm-hmm. But if you're going to have a Mastermind Alliance with a great deal of depth, like I mentioned, sharing financial statements, that's a very personal thing. Mm-hmm. And that's not just a passing relationship. You want to open up your kimono to the world. It's a very personal sort of thing. So that's kind of different. But I think they're both extremely valuable.
Excellent. Should one have a mastermind group for different purposes? Is that something that you've experienced, Dr. Dudley?
Yes, and I was thinking about, we talked about the Mastermind Alliance, and I was thinking about Napoleon Hill and the people that he had on his mastermind group, and all of them played a leading role in pulling together what he wanted to get done. And I thought about Henry Ford, too, and that group that all on Firestone, and those people together had a big purpose working, because you sold cars, you had to sell tires, and so forth. So I think when we really get down to looking at it and looking at what Mr. Hill said to us and been telling us how to pull this mastermind group together, but I think it should be as closely knitted as it can, that each one that can benefit the other one, I think that plays a role.
I think that's important, specialized knowledge or specialized experiences that they bring together to bolster the common good of the mastermind group.
One of the benefits we haven't talked about, we've looked at how it serves us, but have you found that it's found a great amount of joy for you to be able to be in a position to serve others?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Because you not only have the opportunity to personally gain more focus through a Mastermind Alliance, you are contributing to the focus of the other members.
Yeah.
And it's through focus that we gain determination and clarity of vision and all these things that are going to help us succeed. And I think that was part of the cornerstone of Dr. Hill's philosophy.
Yeah, for me, everywhere I go, I guess I've given away, made arrangements for people to have thousands and thousands of Think and Grow Rich books. And the people come to me and say, well, you helped me. I'm wealthy today because you told me and you sold me or you gave me Think and Grow Rich books. So that's a tremendous joy when you just go ahead and reach it. Now, again, another thing in the Mastermind Alliance that we did, I brought my whole team together, and we pulled enough money to pay for 100 kids to pay their full tuition going to college. That was one of the results of the Mastermind Alliance with my employees. And what I did with that was I went to speak at a graduation, and that time It was predominantly a black high school and was happened to be named Dudley. And I told them I didn't see no black boys had an honor roll. So when I came back to the office, I told them, look, I want to pay kids for their college if they have a certain grade average, that was a B average at least. And so when I talked to my people, I said, well, I want to get $6 from each one of you every week from your pay. And they said, well, someone said I can't do it. I said, well, if you can do it, would you do it? And they said, oh, of course I would. So I called the payroll staff and I said, here's what I want to do. I want to increase everybody by $8 a week, and we're going to take $6 of that and pay for the scholarship. And that was what we did. We gave one school $250,000, and we really worked with them. So we pulled that mastermind group together, and then I told them every time we invest some money for the benefit for the students, I told them the group did it. It wasn't me. It was a group did it. And so that's tremendous benefit for our organization.
What a great story. Well, we can go on and talk about the subject. Napoleon Hill also talked about creating an invisible mastermind group in order to empower yourself towards the achievement of your goals. And there's so many directions. In winding down, perhaps we could start with you, Jo. If there was one takeaway that you feel you can impart to our listeners from our discussion that they can apply today, what would that be? And in doing so, could you also tell our listeners where they can find out more about you and the services and the products that you offer?
I would suggest that our listeners begin today to look for a mastermind group that they might participate in as a new member or form their own mastermind group. I gave this a lot of thought when I first was in mastermind groups, and I actually wrote a how-to thing. I did a speech for the NSA group that I belonged to at that time, and then I came up with a mastermind manual. And for me, knowing how to do it, how to proceed from where you are, go from where you are to where you really want to be, is important, but it begins with thinking about it, and I would highly recommend it. As I said, I'm working on forming a new group myself, and so I'm trying to take my own advice in this. People can find me at my basic website, www.goalminds, GOALMINDS.com. That's the name of my business. It's like goal, you have a goal in life, and mind. Your mind is so important. GOALMINDS.com. Thank you.
Well, thank you so much, Jo. And I remember years ago, the first time I encountered you and met you was this featured article on goals that you wrote in Toastmaster magazine. And from there, we years later got in touch with one another. It's been a joy having you on the program. Dr. Dudley, can you share with us that one takeaway that you feel we can benefit from and where we can contact you?
Well, I think that it's important for everybody to get started on that Mastermind Alliance. You may not have the people that you want right today, but start somewhere. Don't wait till all the lights turn green before you start, because it'll take too long. So what I would do is get started with people that I know. I just recently talked to a person I told she can have a mastermind group with her daughter, and her daughter's about 11 years old. Mm-hmm. And she said, well, how can I do that? She doesn't do this, she doesn't do that. I said, find some common grounds that y'all can work on in school or books or TV or something like that. So I think there's a lot that can be learned. It has to be applied, and you have to use it. I can be found at jdudley7210 at mail.com,
Wonderful, Dr. Dudley. And, of course, your fabulous book is something that every person should have in hand and in their library, Walking by Faith. That is terrific. Thank you so much for imparting your knowledge. And, well, Don, why don't you take us home?
I was just thinking as I was listening to Jo and Dr. Jo about through the years, I must say that without Mastermind Alliances, I would not have achieved what I've achieved in my life. I think it makes a tremendous difference in our ability to go to the next level because we're tapping into the contributions of other people and their ideas. So I would suggest that you're proactive and you get started and vow, if you are not a part of a Mastermind Alliance right now, just vow to start one. And here's my recommended process. Get a copy of Napoleon Hill's Keys to Success with the 17 principles in it. It's available in paperback. Maybe get multiple copies because you're going to want to write in the margins and underline your own, but give a copy of that book to one person who you have chosen as an ideal individual to be a part of a Mastermind Alliance. And just say to them, I want to give you this book, and I think you'll enjoy it, but read it and pay special attention to Chapter 2 because I would like to start a Mastermind Alliance, and I'd like for you and I to be the nucleus of it. And maybe we're going to have 4, 5, 6 people, whatever we decide, but you and I together, if you choose to do this, can agree on selecting additional people to invite. So you're going to be the proactive one, and you're going to go to one person you really have a respect for you'd like to have in the group, and then together, if they agree, you would build this group. And I think that's a logical, relatively simple way to get started, but you're going to get a great deal of benefit. Just follow the principles of Dr. Napoleon Hill, and your life will never be the same. As to how to contact me, the name is Don Hutson, and that's H-U-T as in Tom, S-O-N. And I can be reached at don@donhutson.com. And my websites are donhutson.com or uslearning.com. And our toll-free number is 800-647-9166, and you'll also find me in social media. But this has been a great pleasure for me, and I'm delighted I made the cut on the list to be a part of this, Phil.
Well, we couldn't do it without you, Don, and Jo, and Dr. Dudley. It's just been such a joy. And, of course, pick up Don Hutson's book, The 1-Minute Entrepreneur and the 1-Minute Negotiator, and we'll have your friend, Ken Blanchard, who wrote The 1-Minute Manager on the lesson of applied faith, which is lesson 3, along with Naomi Rhodey and Elizabeth Jeffries.
Oh, that's great. They'll impart great knowledge.
Yeah, so stay tuned for that. Dr. Dudley, Jo Condrill, Don Hutson, God bless you, and thank you so much for being on this program.
Thank you.
God bless you, Phil.
My pleasure.